VT offices are closing. Doctors are retiring and not being replaced. New grads are hesitant to enter the field. Some practices are quietly putting therapy on hold. And the narrative we've accepted is vision therapy simply isn't profitable. But that's not the full story. Today, I want to talk about why practices are actually closing. And more importantly, who's most at risk. Let's be clear. Vision therapy works. The outcomes are real. The transformations are life changing. The need is massive. So, if the clinical value is high, why is sustainability low? Because there isn't a therapy problem, it's a structural problem. Most of us were trained in a model that looks like this: one to one, in office only, therapist heavy, doctor dependent, location bound, revenue tied directly to hours worked. It's a labor model. And labor models have ceilings. When your revenue increases, only when you work more hours or you hire more people, you have built a fragile structure. That worked decades ago. It is cracking now. Here's what's actually happening: overhead is rising, staff turnover is real, therapist training is expensive, and insurance companies barely recognize optometrists as vision therapy providers. Public awareness is inconsistent, and if your entire business depends on one or two therapists staying, one doctor overseeing, one physical location, one geographic radius, then a single disruption can destabilize everything. That's why practices close. Not because VT doesn't work, but because the structure can't absorb shock. Now let's talk about risk. You're most at risk if your model is 100% dependent on in office only treatment. I'll say that again. You're most at risk if your model is 100% in office only treatment. Your revenue depends entirely on therapist availability. You personally must oversee almost every case. You have no scalable layer, and you have no systemized methodology. Your access is limited to driving distance. You're also at risk if you're early in practice and trying to bolt this onto a primary care without structural planning. Or if you're mid career and exhausted but can't step back without revenue collapsing. That's fragility. And fragility is the common denominator in closures. The practices that are not struggling have done one key thing: they reduced structural fragility. They standardized clinical delivery. They built layered delivery. They reduced dependency on single therapists. They've extended access beyond their therapy room. They've created systems that survive disruption. They didn't change the science, they changed the delivery. That's evolution. Here's the part that, is resonating in the back of our heads. If optometry doesn't build resilient VT models, others will fill the gap. They already are. Not because they understand the visual system better, but because they are available. Availability wins in modern healthcare. And if we remain location bound, labor bound, and structurally fragile, we lose ground. Vision therapy is powerful, but without structure, it won't survive economic pressure. So the question isn't, does VT work? The question is your model resilient? Because VT offices are closing, and the practices most at risk are the ones that haven't evolved. In the next episode, we're going to go deep into talking about what happens when we don't evolve and why the access gap is already being filled. If this resonated with you, like and subscribe and share it with a friend. I will see you in the next one.